Hey folks, welcome to episode 49 of Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. I am your host, James Ferguson. Can you believe it's been almost a year of me doing this? It's incredible. I'm really excited, guys. This week, I caught up with Eliot Rahal, the writer and originator of Cult Classic, coming soon from Vault Comics. This is a shared universe of horror stories. The first one, Return to Whisper, debuts on February 28th. I've read the first issue, and it is off to a great start. Quick note on this interview, I am currently a little under the weather, so my voice sounds a bit different. I like to think that it's akin to a smooth jazz radio DJ and not just me finally hitting puberty. Anyway, Eliot can be found online on Twitter at Eliot Rahal. That's with one L and one T in Eliot, and Rahal is R-A-H-A-L. That is it for news, updates, and whatnot. Now, let's dive right into episode 49 of Funny Book Splatter with my guest, Eliot Rahal. Let's dive right in. The way I start the show is basically asking you to pitch your book. So if there was someone walking down the street and you're like, hey, let me tell you about my comic, how would you describe Cult Classic to them?
Sure. You want me to go now?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, the lights on.
Put a gun to my head, man. Okay, all right. Let's put some stakes here.
Yeah.
No, Okay, so Cult Classic, Return to Whisper, is basically the Goonies grown up and gone wrong. It's a story about 9 friends who are, as teenagers, they discover this great treasure, and then they all, you know how in the Goonies they discover the treasure? Well, in this book, the idea is that they realize that they can't keep the money because their parents will take it away from them. You know, who's going to let 13-year-olds keep millions of dollars of treasure money? You know, there's a lot of complications with it. And so they decide to make a pact with one another, saying that they will come back in 15 years when they're adults, split the money, and no one will be the wiser. Well, flash forward 15 years later, and they are back in their hometown of Whisper to not uncover a treasure, but to bury a friend. And it then turns into a whole murder mystery saga 5-issue miniseries thing.
Cool. I mean, it has from what I got from it, there's a very like kind of Stephen King vibe to it. Like, it might just be because, you know, it is in the air from the recent movie or anything. When you have
I worried about that a little bit. Yeah? I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I was like, fuck, they had to remake it now.
Yeah, but it has that kind of vibe of like anything and everything could happen. It seems. So I will definitely talk about this, but the shared universe aspect to it. But it seems like this is a world where like I don't know yet if like supernatural is a thing in this world, but even without that, it's still like you have a good kind of compelling narrative that starts off, immediately pulls you in with the characters, and then you have this kind of horror element to it of death and murder and mayhem and whatnot. But not so much mayhem, I guess, just yet, but some of the stuff that the kids are watching. Yeah.
Just wait.
But this is the first of a shared universe that you're doing at Vaults, correct?
Correct. We have big plans, and hopefully we don't get too ahead of ourselves. But this is the first main series, I should say, in the shared universe. So the idea of Cult Classic is that Cult Classic is like a line of books, like Goosebumps is a line of books, and everything will have its own title. This one is Cult Classic Return to Whisper. And they're all bound together. They all live in the same place throughout the decades, throughout the generations in this town of Whisper, which is like, like Springfield from The Simpsons. I want it to be a real place. A place that has iconography to it, a place that has monuments, things that you're familiar with, like the Quickie Mart or the elementary school where Homer and the Simpson family home. But it's that set in the Twilight Zone or set in a Black Mirror kind of universe, or Stephen King verse. And, that's the idea. Cult Classic Return to Whisper is the first main series. However, there have been, we had a 0 issue that I believe you got.
Yeah, I got it. You actually signed it. Thanks for being alive. So.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. But those stories I want people to come in and add to this world, and there it is. And I think the only way for people to add to the world correctly is for them to own a piece of it. And that's what Vault and I both agree on. We came to that kind of conclusion together. And so, everybody who has their story owns a piece of it. And, and they all live in the same world, and other creators can use other pieces. We haven't gotten to that point yet. We'll figure out how to do that a little bit later. But the idea is just to, invite other people to come and play in this world, and we're going to see how it shakes out. We have big plans. Like I said, we have a year of plans, but comics is a hard business. So I've been really just shilling the shit out of this thing because I'm very anxious. And final order cutoff is tomorrow on the 5th. But in Return to Whisper, we have 5 backups. We're gonna have 5 backups, 2-page backups from other creators. We have other plans throughout the year that we're not ready to unveil yet because we're just kind of focused on this first 5 issues.
Yeah, and again, because I think I saw some news today that there's, I guess, another series with Tim Daniel was announced. Is that right?
Tim is doing a 2-page backup in the main series.
Oh, and I misread the hell. I saw that, and I didn't even get a chance to click on it yet to look at it. So that it's just that he's doing a 2-page backup in the main series, or is he doing more?
Who the fuck do you think you are, man?
Yeah, I know. Look, man. It's the holidays. I'm relaxed. I don't know.
Get it. Tim's doing, so, we have a great lineup. So many people that I can't name all the creative team because it's a lot of creative team. But Tim's doing a 2-page backup that's kind of like a Swamp Thing thing.
Oh, cool.
But he's doing the Swamp Thing version of, for Whisper. And it's my favorite beer, my favorite type of breweries are, local shitty beers.
Are swamp breweries?
Yeah, swamp. They're like swamp beer, what you were saying though. Miller High Life is a national treasure. But in Chicago you have Old Style. Up here in Minneapolis you have Grain Belt and Hams. And in Pittsburgh they have Irons or something. I forget what they call it. I saw it on a documentary with George Romero where they're just drinking cheap beer. And so I wanted a cheap brewery. I wanted that brewery for Whisper, and it's called Mainlander, and I worked with Tim on that. And the story's about like a Swamp Thing guy who was made toxic by the chemical compounds that make up that beer, and it's fun. I love Tim. Tim is when you talk about life goals. That guy seems to have it all, and he's a genuinely good person. It's rare in this business.
Yeah, I've met him a couple times after he co-wrote Curse, which is like an awesome werewolf miniseries with Michael Morrissey that I really dug through Boom Studios a few years ago. So, but I think he seems to be really heavily involved in Vault too, designing a lot of the logos and stuff that appear there.
He's a partner there now, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. He's I see him waving that flag high, which is great because Vault's been doing some phenomenal stuff lately.
They have been, and on that note, I gotta say, there's this series or this idea started as one idea, which is the first book that you see now, and then I pitched Vault a second book, saying that, oh yeah, they're shared, and that's just my way of saying fucking pick up my second book, assholes. And
that was how you signed it, right?
That's how I signed it. But they were intrigued, and then they started coming up with ideas, and then I started coming up with ideas, and that's how we got to where we are at right now. And I gotta say, all the other publishers are great. I'm not gonna say that they're not great. But this idea couldn't exist anywhere but Vault, because they're young, they're ambitious, and they're willing to take a big risk. And the Wassel brothers, Adrian and Damien, are great partners to have in this.
Yeah, it seems like they're really taking chances, and it's very interesting. There's a number of these kind of like smaller publishers that have been popping up over the past few years, and each one is entirely unique. It's like this is this special perfect storm that developed that only they could do. And Vault is out there, and they have their own kind of setup. I see that with folks like Scout Comics, which is another up and coming publisher, where it's just like they're the only ones that are doing this, and it's really cool. So
I think it's the only way, to survive in the marketplace, to compete even against places like IDW or Dark Horse, or because these indie publishers aren't taking from Marvel and DC; they're taking from those other indie publishers.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, but it makes. That's just how it goes. Hopefully we can expand readership, but that's a whole different podcast that we don't need to talk about.
Yeah, there's the state of the industry is a whole other topic. So with how you're operating this at Vault, since you kind of came up with the initial idea, are you kind of like saying like, yeah, let's do this or that, or like, yeah, I'd love to have so and so do a book in this universe, or is it kind of like a free for all? How does all that connect?
I'm honestly like learning as I go. It's a lot of on the fly stuff, which is I'm an anxious person, which I don't, so I'm not dealing with it that well. But like I said, the Wassels are my collaborators, and nothing gets moved forward without me, bless you, or without my injection in it. Mm-hmm. And I can certainly say no and all those things. And I have I do have power in that respect. However, I've decided that in terms of who gets what and stuff like that, I'm going to talk and make recommendations, but at the same time, I'm not very comfortable with that situation. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to not be a career maker or something because, it's an uncomfortable position to be in, and a creator never wants to be in that position. They just want to create, so I'm here. Yeah. I'm here to make the universe the best it can and keep it on a vision and keep it on track and work with them and then promote it and be the face of it and make recommendations. But when it comes to giving people a job, oh boy, that's stresses the shit out of me, man. I'm not gonna.
Well, it's you're like an editor. You're like the editor in chief of the cult classic universe, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, dude. I'm fucking awful to editors. I still have a little bit of it, but when I'm 29 now, when I first started out in comics, when I was 23, I was fucking relentless. I have been relentless for years, and I would not want to get emails from me, and I also, comics is it's a tight-knit community, and I don't want to. I don't want to alienate anybody because, we all, I feel as though the reason why we all kind of gravitate towards comics is because we've all been alienated in some way or another. Yeah. And the last thing I want to do is accidentally, hurt somebody or something like that.
Well, I think the horror community too is even more inclusive, it seems, than your greater population of the comic book industry. So somehow we've all bonded over ridiculous murder and mayhem and kills and bloodshed and stuff, and it's oh yeah, isn't all this cool? So when you play in that sandbox and you deliver something cool, then people are more responsive to it, and they're yeah, let's do that, let's play with these toys, let's figure all these things out. So I feel like it could be a lot more flexible.
I certainly hope it's cool. I certainly hope it's cool. I've been getting some positive feedback, which is encouraging, but you never know until it's out, and then everybody could have been lying to me. But then they look stupid too. So
yeah, it would be their fault too. Now you did mention that you were relentless. I think I confirmed this story with you when we saw each other in New York Comic Con. But if you because I asked one of my first experiences at New York Comic Con was at a Robot Chicken panel. Can I refresh this story? with
Oh,
you?
yeah, sure, yeah.
So I remember being at a Robot Chicken panel at one of my first it was like my first or second year at New York Comic Con, so this was like 6 or 7 years ago, and
Hmm.
this guy gets up and asks a question about submitting spec scripts or something to Robot Chicken, and they're like, no, we can't. The whole panel's like, we can't read anything. And then the guy says, oh, well, look underneath your chairs. And there were scripts taped underneath all the chairs. And I confirmed last convention, that was you. You were the
That was
guy.
me. That was me, and that was also Donnie Cates.
Yeah.
We did that together.
Which is a ballsy, awesome move. Like the planning to get there early to have that, like, so they were there for the whole day? Is that
here's the thing, man. We had we had pro badges, or maybe exhibitor badges.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, they're all kind of the same, I think.
A little bit, which is disturbing. This was when Donnie and I were pitching the paybacks, and we came up with the idea of doing this a week before the con, and we just printed off, I think, maybe 5 or 6 copies because there was pretty heavy stuff. It was expensive,
Yeah.
and I believe that was a Friday or a Saturday. I want to say it was a Saturday. I want to say that panel was on a Saturday, and we went on Thursday behind into like the depths of the Javits Center, and we just walked with extreme purpose and flashed our badges like we were supposed to be there, and we were in like suits and ties too.
Yeah, complete the package.
Yeah, and like nobody gave us any problem whatsoever. We taped them underneath there. Nobody noticed. And when it came time to do it, it was just like we did it. And then security was even worse. You would think they would have done something after that, but we left. The panel was still going on, and we went behind the stage.
Oh, yeah?
And waited for them to come out. And they come out, and we were like, we tried to do I don't know what we tried to do. I think at that point we were so jacked up and so excited, we just started screaming at these guys.
Macaulay Culkin, like, hello.
Well, I started screaming at Breckin Meyer. And I started going, hey, Breckin Meyer, I know Kumail. Let's talk about it. And then he kept going. He went like, and then they got in a limousine and left. And they never tweeted about it. That's really bothered me. Is like I wasn't expecting a job. Well, maybe a little bit, but
you could hope for one. I
was expecting for a response. Mm-hmm. And they did not respond.
Well, I guess they probably didn't want to give other people ideas to be like, no, in every convention we're going to go to, San Diego, someone's going to pull the same stunt or something like that. And it's like, we still can't look at these.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not the point. The point isn't for them to look at them. The point is for them to look at us.
Yes, very,
the point is for them to look at me, and that's what people don't understand necessarily about marketing, is that it's not necessarily about the product itself. It's about looking, like, making visibility, making awareness,
it's also networking. Yeah, it's just that if you're when you're out there, if you're pitching or whatever, it's like, oh, well, this guy seemed cool, or this guy had some cool ideas before, or he had a ballsy move like this, then yeah, why not?
Listen, next time I see Macaulay Culkin, I'm gonna beat the shit out of him.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Look out, Macaulay. He'll be waiting for you, though. Like, he's really good at setting traps. I've seen Home Alone.
Culkin, you better not be home alone, huh?
I got it, man. I got it.
Did you get that joke?
I did. Thank you. So, being that going back to Cult Classic, that there is I feel like there's a Stephen King vibe. Was Stephen King like a writer that you were into early on in life? I feel like he's like a gateway author for folks to get into the horror genre.
I came to Stephen King in my 20s,
Oh,
actually.
yeah?
I came to Stephen King with Under the Dome, and then I read the Dark Tower stuff, and then I've gone back and read some of his short stories. And then I've seen every single one of his movies. But, in terms of like horror, my favorite stuff is, I mean, I love the old Universal Monster stuff. My favorite movies are, Creepshow and the original Night of the Living Dead. And like, one of my favorite movies of all time is the original Day the Earth Stood Still. And like, I just loved movies like that growing up and stuff like that. And I also, grew up in Chicago. And where are you from? Where are you based out of?
I'm in the suburbs of New York.
Okay, so I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and every Saturday we had something called Svengoolie. Are you familiar
I
with
The
Svengoolie?
name, and I think, was it a theater? Or did I
Um,
totally get that wrong?
it's a thing. It's a whole thing. It's very similar to Elvira, um, but it's worse and better at the same time. It's like this legacy character in Chicago. It's 70 years old or something
Hmm.
like that. Two people have played him. And Svengoolie is just like a fat, just Polish South Side guy from Chicago who dresses up in monster makeup and throws rubber chickens at a camera and shows bad movies.
Wow. See,
And
I had nothing like that in New York, because like I think we just got it was all the New York stations. Like I don't even know if we had like a local cable access kind of thing for us, because it was all like, well, it's the biggest media market. Like you get all the
yeah,
regular runs. So I rarely saw anything that was like a local produced kind of thing, because it was all just overrun by, ABC, NBC, and CBS.
I wouldn't say Svengoolie is local. It's local to Chicago. I would say it's regional to the
Yeah.
Midwest. Not that that matters, but and I remember watching that as a kid and just being like, "What the fuck is this? This is amazing." And then like, when I started reading comics in high school, my one of my friends who I made junior year of high school, Mike Janes, who stood up at my wedding, he got me into everything that was cool. He introduced me to Army of Darkness, and then I became obsessed with like Sam Raimi stuff and movies like that. And then I started reading more horror and more horror comics, and those big old beautiful art books, the EC art books
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so I just love the genre, a particular, like, and I even like some Clive Barker stuff, not all Clive Barker stuff. I'll say that.
Mm.
I think a little. I don't like Hellraiser, but I do like Nightbreed. But the Freddys and the Jasons and the Michaels, like, there's just certain magic to it.
Yeah.
It's not. People call it horror, and yeah, it is horror, but at the same time, it's so fun. It's
Yeah.
meant. It's horror. People who take horror seriously, yeah, I agree, take it seriously. And I'm not saying every horror movie needs to have like a tongue and a cheek to it, but it's just like the purpose of horror is to elicit a reaction, and so you're crafting material based on that, and you're trying to elicit one specific reaction, which is fear or unsettledness or something in that genre. You're trying to get, and like, I don't think cult classic Return to Whisper is scary. I don't think scary works. I think it's just supposed to hit a tone. It's supposed to hit that sort of magic tone.
Yeah. And I think you hit that, because it kind of like instantly pulls you into this world. Like we've been in this kind of situation. Like, kids have, we've all been kids. We've all been, wanted to watch, scary movies with our friends or something. And you could kind of instantly be transported back to that time in your life. So you have this kind of nostalgia factor to it. And then merge it with the present day stuff to make this kind of like 1-2 punch thing. So, all right, I remember what it's like here. Then, oh, wow, these people got all screwed up. How did they go from here to that? And now you're going to kind of bridge the gap there, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's the story is what happens in between, and you know that's the point of the story is that you know you're talking about nostalgia, and the you know this book does rely on it, but at the same time the goal is to subvert it. You know the reason why our characters are so fucked up as adults is because they saw some fucked up shit as children.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're damaged. They've gone through like a lot of trauma. You know, and we look at our past, no matter what age group as, is like this sort of golden thing. You know, unless something really bad happened to you, and that's a whole different thing. But like, no, I'm not trying to be glib about it. But like, you know, we look back upon our youth because we remember it. It was the time that mattered most because there was no other time before or after it. It was like that. Those are our first conscious memories, and like so, you know, we have such like sensory magic with certain foods or certain songs or certain movies or certain times of the year, and they remind us of things, and you know, and that is nostalgia. But the thing is that you know, if you flash forward back to those times, those are just normal times, just set in a different decade, and fucked up shit was happening. You know, like that's you know that's my problem with the Goonies. That's my problem with I love Stranger Things and I love the Goonies, but my problem is that like these kids would be so fucked up. Like they're not like, you know.
Yeah, what did they do? What did the kids from the Goonies do the next day? Like, did they go to school?
They were
like,
fucking therapy. That's what they do.
Like, you can't just like go back to a normal life of like, you know, going to school or you know, church or anything. Like you just experienced, like you saw murder. You found a mutant man in a pirate ship. Like,
how are you okay?
Yeah. Like, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot to process for young minds.
And that's kind of where I'm coming at with this story. You know, I wanted to take that sort of cast of kids, that magical 12 to 14 age range, and do those kinds of stories, but put, you know, a real world consequence on it, you know, or as much as you can in a fucking comic book.
Yeah. Well, look, I think you hit those marks because these are real people. Like the way they come through, it's like they have personality. They have their own like. You have this kind of like "Are You Afraid of the Dark" almost intro to it with the Grave Robber Society that is that is all right. Here are your cast of characters, and you immediately get a sense of, you know, how they interact a bit, some more so than others because you have these little kind of rivalries here or there, or like this guy's ribbing on the other guy. But it's like, oh, okay, this is the Goonies, you know, this is your group of kids that you're going to follow along in this adventure, and then we're going to see how screwed up they get as adults.
If you rewatch the Goonies, it is belligerent. It is it's almost impossible to understand what's going on because all those kids are just shouting at each other the entire time.
See, I didn't get the full effect of the Goonies. I didn't see it until I was 20 years old. So to me, like I saw it, I was like, all right, that was okay. Like I missed that like magic age of like I should have saw it when I was like 8, and then that would have been.
I saw it when I was young and I loved it, and then I rewatched it as an adult and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, like I've had that problem with the Transformers. Like I watched the original Generation 1 as a kid and loved it. And then I like when it came out on DVD, I snatched them all up and I was like, oh, I can't wait to rewatch all these. I was like, this makes no damn sense. Like none of it makes. They're all just like looking for batteries, basically. Like every episode.
Energon.
Yeah, Energon. That's it. Okay, like we're gonna turn this. We're gonna set all this on fire and turn it into cubes. I'm like, why?
Sometimes I feel like I never got into Transformers that hard. I was super into Beast Wars growing up.
I fucking love Beast Wars, man.
Dude, I was so into cats, and I was so into Beast Wars. I didn't have many friends. And
wait, like cats, like the animal, or like the musical?
Oh, the animal cats. I was super into cats, and like that fucking white tiger, that snow leopard Beast War thing. Yeah. That guy was the best. He was like the Green Ranger of that show.
He was like so chill, and like he would only come out in special occasions where it was like, oh, you guys are really in a jam. Like I'm gonna come in here, drop some wisdom, shoot, you know, pterosaur and then
so
I'm out.
So dope. So dope. But I do feel like Transformers, the people who made that or created it, were writing it like as though it were like due in an hour.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, so these fucking robots, and there's Energon, and they got to get the Energon.
And then, hey, look at this cool. Yeah, can we reuse the animation of them turning into a truck again, like just over and over?
Do it.
That's it. Okay, we'll fill that in, and then they'll transform back, and they'll fight a little bit, and then we'll go back. Yeah, it's tough revisiting some of that stuff.
I'm not trying to hate on it.
No, and that's the thing. Like, I still love it, but like, I recognize now as an adult, it's kind of crazy and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, it just hit me at that right age that it will always have that special place in my heart. Same thing with Voltron. Exactly. Like, Voltron was my jam too, and I see that, and it's like, all right, there's like a 10-minute, construction sequence when they all merge those lines together, and it's like, all right, like, you're just reusing that animation to sell the toys. Crazy. Like, I get it.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But it's funny though, looking back on that kind of stuff about like, revisiting these things that like, you held at such high regard as a kid, and then you go back and you're like, no, this was, I either had no taste or the options were so limited that, I'm gonna take a hot take right now, right? Go for it.
Hot take, ready for this?
Ready.
Hot take. Ready. So my wife has never seen the original Star Wars up until about 3 years ago.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you added that qualifier.
Yes. And so I was like, we got to do it. And we watched A New Hope. And that movie's fucking boring, dude.
I can understand that. I tried showing it to my kid, who's 4.5, and the whole time he's just like, "Where's Darth Vader? Is Darth Vader coming? All right, there's Darth Vader. Is Darth Vader coming back?" Like, to him, Star Wars is Darth Vader, and it's the Darth Vader show. It's the coolest character he's ever seen.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, but then it's like the rest of it. Like, he made it through, I think, 40 minutes, and he's like, "I'm done. What else you got?" Like, I don't want to watch the rest of this. So he hasn't made it through the whole movie, let alone the other two in the trilogy. Just didn't care.
I think, and I have seen A New Hope 200 times. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I saw it 200 times from the ages of like 7 to 12.
Yeah.
You know?
That's about how many times my kids have watched Boss Baby. So I really hope that doesn't hold as the same level of quality to them, or the same level of esteem that I hold Star Wars and Transformers to. They're all about fucking Boss Baby.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. It was I was just ragging on Boss Baby. That's how you said you watched Star Wars. You said you watched Star Wars 200 times. I feel like that's how many times my kids have watched Boss Baby.
Dude, Boss Baby. Never saw it.
You're not missing anything.
I got nothing to say about it.
Everything you thought it was, it is. It's weird. I'm not really comfortable with it, but they love it, and it shuts them up for an hour and a half. So there you go.
There you go.
Just put it right in front of them. Excuse me. I'm a little under the weather too, so I sound my voice is a little bit deeper than normal, I guess. So for everyone listening at home, I finally hit puberty. I'm really excited.
Great. This camera angle that I'm at, though, is super unflattering, and I've been trying to lose weight, and it's just like double chin, it's right there, man, and it's killing me. It's killing me.
I want to ask you about. I mean, you have a great sense of humor. You definitely bring some good comedy to your books in general, and I think you have that nice mix, it seems, between horror and comedy in Cult Classic. So, like, and it's funny because, like, those are two, I think, of the toughest genres to do in comics. You can't control pacing, you can't control how fast the reader is going through the book, but you seem to excel at that. Like, is that something you're sitting there and, like, carefully crafting out each piece, or is this like, well, this is just how people talk and you just kind of roll with it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question with a lot of history to it. I'd say up front, I would disagree with your assessment. I mean, depending on the type of reader somebody is, you can control the pace of how they read, depending on the amount of panels you put on a page and dialogue. And, the more panels and more dialogue, the longer you're going to stay there,
True.
the less panels. And that takes into play, like Brian K. Vaughan is a master of moving and then pulling and then moving and then pulling. I mean, he's in terms of pacing. My two favorite writers in terms of pacing alive right now are like easy Brian K. Vaughan and then also Tom King.
Yeah,
Tom King.
I was just going to mention.
Yeah, but Tom King takes a totally different approach. I think Brian K. Vaughan excels in minimalism, whereas Tom King almost like overdoes everything, but he does it in this like really unique, kind of soft and poetic way. And I love his Batman right now.
Yeah, the past 3 issues of that have been nuts. Like I've been hit or miss with him. I feel like with some of his stuff for Batman, but like lately since he proposed to Catwoman, I've been all over it.
I loved it. I missed a few issues after the proposal, but I just jumped on 3 issues back with Superman going on a date and all that stuff.
Oh my God, I loved it. Good. That was so awesome.
That was such an awesome.
But you are right in that you can control pacing, because what he can do there is hold on a beat by replicating that artwork. So it's like here it's the same exact shot again, and it's just it you get that extra beat to let that moment sink in, and that could be from an emotional angle, but it can also be for a comedic angle there too. Yeah, it's timing.
And so like if you can understand that aspect of comics and how they move and what you can do to control the reader, because it is such a personal experience reading a comic book. And then I don't do it anymore just because I don't have the time anymore. But I've been writing since I was 17, and I started writing by doing stand-up comedy in Chicago. And I was an active comedian in Chicago probably like 17 and 18. I was just kind of fucking around. But when I turned 19, I was like super into it. Yep. And I was a cast member at a place called the Lincoln Lodge, which is the longest running independent stand-up showcase in the United States. That's and awesome. I got to open for Kyle Kinane and Kumail Nanjiani, which is why I was screaming at Rick and Meyer. And I got great stage time. I learned how to write my own material. And, people think that is what makes you funny. And yeah, like that's what, being funny is a practice. You have to practice at being funny. It's, you have a natural ability and then you learn how to hone it. I come from an Arab family, and my entire family is like, it's very borscht belt humor. It's all my uncles are like Don Rickles. Almost everybody's very mean to each other. It's very mean, but it's an interesting dynamic. But what comedy teaches you isn't necessarily how to be funny, but it's, pacing. Comedy is all about timing and pacing. Mm-hmm. When to deliver a punchline, when to walk people, when to let a laugh sit, when to hit them with a tagline, when to, you learn pacing, but not only that, you learn pacing for your specific way of telling a joke. Because a joke is a story, and a live event is a story, a live performance is a story. The reason why they call it live is because it's alive. Mm-hmm. That it's an existing art that exists in that moment, and it's a participation between audience and performer. And you learn your own voice and how you like to do things and how you like to tell stories. I take a lot of that experience with me into writing comics. And then I read the comics I like, and I'm inspired by them. But whether you're doing drama, whether you're doing horror, whether you're doing comedy in comics, all writing is about pacing. Mm-hmm. All writing is about pacing. I believe that 100%. That's and with this book, the challenge of this book is that there's so many characters, and so it's actually been difficult to write for me because there's such a balancing act that I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, because I would imagine you're trying to give everyone some time to develop each of those characters. I mean, in the it looks like in this group, there's 8 kids, so that's a
Yeah,
good amount that you're trying to develop. And it's like, all right, some get more in the spotlight than others because I don't know, they just rise to the top, or they're doing more stuff in this issue. But I'm imagining that you have to kind of like make sure you're paying attention to all of them, like they're your own kids.
yeah, and other characters are highlighted more throughout the issue. You can't highlight everyone evenly, so you have to take the risk and assume that people are going to come back for the rest of the story. And the benefit there is that if you're picking up a Vault book, chances are you're not just a casual reader.
Yeah.
You're probably a true believer of comics, and so that's the benefit of working with these smaller presses is that your readership might be smaller, but it's probably more loyal.
Yeah, and I think you're working also to grow that audience as you're going through, and having those people that are going to be that ride or die fan base of yours. That it's like, hey, I like them, and I like the other stuff he's done, and they're going to follow you wherever you go, especially to a company like Vault.
I hope so.
Yeah.
God, I hope so.
Excuse me. So now, but speaking of the characters, like they all come through with their own unique personalities. Are they based on anybody, or is that are they just all like, well, I need a kid that's going to be a wise ass. I need a kid who's going to be more by the book, and are there elements of people that
it's a little bit of all those things. Yeah. It's a little bit of everything. I mean, I definitely was looking at genre teens. Genre teens are my favorite type of teens. Specifically the Runaways is like fucking on point genre teens, and it's genius. So there is that element to it. But at the same time, I did draw from people I know, not necessarily just from my childhood, but from across childhood to adulthood. Like I did have in high school, I was a little bit of the runt of the litter in a group of friends, and I always kind of felt like the outsider. But I did have that sort of element of teen friends who did get into hijinks. And my friend, his name was Lane Rizzardini, and we called him Gizzardini. And so there's definitely that stuff in there. I mean, I was called names, and then there are just people who I found interesting as adults that I thought would be interesting as kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I guess you're able to pull into that. Like, it's awesome that you're able to pull in a specific reference from or specific name, I guess, that you were calling someone as a kid into this comic.
Yeah.
And then I realized I forgot to point out this, I guess, but when you were talking about Svengoolie, I guess, is that the influence for the host of the Cult Classic show?
Oh, yeah. Rip G. Raves.
Which is such like a perfect name for a host like that. It just seems so. That's does I mean I'm gonna have to look up Svengoolie now after this.
You're gonna have to. It's great. It's great.
This is gonna be a YouTube rabbit hole that I'm just gonna be diving down for the rest of the night.
It's just good fun. I love. Again, it goes back to like the idea of like building Whisper as a place, and if you're gonna build Whisper as a place, you need icons and you need monuments and you need things for people to hold on to. And Rip is one of those. Rip is our Krusty the Clown. Like, what is The Simpsons without Krusty? Cult Classic is a thing. It's a tradition. It's a beloved institution. The TV show inside the universe. I for the longest time wanted to be Svengoolie. And part of me still does want to be Svengoolie. There's still time. You never say die. But I'm fascinated by local celebrity, by local myth. I think, and I think that's because I grew up in the suburbs, and the suburbs where I'm from are specifically engineered to not have defining characteristics. And that's why I like cities, and that's why I like small towns, is because they're places with people with history. And, I have lived in a lot of different places, and, hearing, my wife is from a small town called Alexandria, Minnesota. Alexandria, Minnesota has a 20-foot statue of a Viking in the middle of their fucking town.
What?
Yeah, it's a town of 12,000 people, 2 hours north of Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's a 12-foot statue of a Viking, and then they have something called the Runestone Museum, and some fucking farmer. It's fraudulent, but he claimed to find a runestone from the Vikings, left by the Vikings in northern central Minnesota. And he went on this quest, and this is in like the 1920s or 30s. He went on this quest to get it verified, and all these people were like, "You're a fraud," and like he killed himself, and then his like fucking kid killed themselves in shame. But now there's this runestone museum in downtown Alexandria, Minnesota, where like they're like, this is our thing,
That's the claim to fame.
There's something special about that. And like obviously cities are easy targets because you have, Chicago, Navy Pier, fucking the Billy Goat, the Cubs, New York, Statue of Liberty, and so on and so on. But, growing up in the suburbs, there is no culture because it's defined by not having a culture. And that's why I got into comics. That's why I got into comedy. That's why I got into horror. Is because I was a existential teenager who just wanted meaning. I wanted meaning. And when you live in a place that doesn't have any meaning, you yearn for it.
Now you made a few references to The Simpsons. So is Whisper like Springfield in that it could be anywhere USA?
It is anywhere USA, but I specifically said it and call it the most haunted hamlet in the upper northern Midwest.
Okay.
I like Midwestern locations. I like northern locations because that's where I grew up in Illinois. I live in Minnesota. That's where I'm from. I have a special connection to it.
Mm-hmm. So you just figure that The Simpsons Springfield is the Springfield in Illinois then?
No, I don't know. Somebody did reveal where it came from.
Yeah, I feel like they did it in one episode, but I think it was after I had fallen off for a bit.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I don't watch it anymore. I did watch a few new episodes, and it's not bad, but again, going back to nostalgia, like the Simpsons lost something when they switched from hand-drawn to digital animation.
Well, and it's also weird looking back on that and seeing like, well, Bart has an iPhone or something, and it's like, this isn't like he used to have a slingshot. Like that was
the TV is a flat screen TV, and it's just like, God, but like, and I get it.
Yeah,
they're making those decisions because they're trying to keep and grow their audience. But for me, it's jarring.
Yeah, but I mean, like the show's been on for like 30 years, so I think they're doing something right, but also like, I think everyone has like a generation of The Simpsons where it's like, no, this is my sweet spot from 89 to 93 or something. Like that's really when I was in it, and then you fall off after that or you pick it up later. But then I'm sure there's a whole generation of kids that are just like, no, like
my little brothers grew up on The Simpsons starting in 2006.
Yeah.
So our way of looking at it is totally different.
Yeah, so you can't. It's funny because there's also like Simpsons has become like another language for people. So like you can kind of like judge someone's cool factor by like the Simpsons references they get, and it sounds like you and your brothers then would be completely off in your references. Yeah, you wouldn't be able.
They like the Clone Wars. They like fucking Phantom Menace. And like they like it. They don't understand why I don't like it. So and that's another element that I tried to put into this book is, generational differences, man. They exist.
Yeah.
They're not just between me and my dad, they're between me and my little brothers, too.
Yeah. And that's it, but I think there is a timeless quality to it, even though like it's set in the late 90s. You have this. I mean, and granted, look, yeah, it could be that I was a kid in the 90s too, so I understand that. It speaks to me in the way that like Stranger Things only does to an extent, but you know, it's not like they're sitting there referencing Pogs and Snap bracelets. You know, you're
no, and I don't want to do that.
No,
you know,
you don't have to.
That's it's too much. You know, who gives a shit?
Yeah. And that way, that also just grounds it in that kind of any time too. So yeah, yes, while you do put a date on it, it's not that, well, it has to be set here because of these references and all that. It could have taken place 10 years earlier. It could have taken place 10 years later. It's just, well, this is how you get to the present day 15 years after the fact.
I want to do another cult classic story set now, you know, but I want to tell it like it's an 80s horror genre piece like Night of the Creeps, but I want to do Night of the Creeps set now. I don't want to do it in the 80s. I want to do it now. Like, where's our Night of the Creeps? Where's the new Night of the Creeps, you know?
Well, look, I think you're out there doing just that in comics now. So hopefully I'm pumped to see where Cult Classic goes, certainly. When does the first issue come out? Is it the end of February?
Yeah, February 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have links to buy that in the show notes for this episode certainly, and by then I'll have the review posted for the first issue too. So yes, it sounds like definitely check this out. Like if you haven't figured it out by now, people listening, this is a cool book that you should be reading. Ultimately,
yeah, I'm glad you liked it, man. You know, I get so nervous. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, I've written a fraction of what you have, but when I throw something out there into the ether, it's kind of terrifying to like think like, please, like, this is a baby that I created, and I'm hoping that it's not horrible or ugly. But
you know, volume of work published doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what matters is just putting yourself out there, man. And it's hard to put yourself out there, especially the older you get.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to do it when you're young because you're kind of like you're not thinking about anything.
Yeah,
but,
you don't know any better.
29.
So. Yeah, you
don't know any better.
Yeah,
and now I'm 29. I overthink everything, dude. I overthink everything. So I mean, good for you. It doesn't matter if you know you've made one book or 100.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what matters is that moment of sharing it.
Yeah.
You know, and so good for you.
Cool. All right. To kind of wrap things up, where are the best places to find you online?
Oh, Twitter's fine. Just follow me at Eliot Rahal.
Okay. And again, we'll link that in the notes too. But otherwise, yeah, we'll look out for Cult Classic Return to Whisper #1 dropping on February 28th from Vault Comics.
I just wanted to make a quick shout out to my collaborators on the book. I realized I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And the art is by Felipe Cunha, who has been incredible to work with, and the colors are by D. Cunif, who is one of the best colorists in the business.
His work's amazing.
And then, yeah, it's so good. And letters by the very patient Taylor Esposito, and a good friend and a good letterer. But I have made him letter the first issue 4 times.
Wow.
And I felt very bad about that. Yes. When I said I overthink things, I fucking overthink everything.
Wow. All right. So that's how much time and effort has gone into it. Now, how, one thing I realized I forgot to ask you, how long has this been in the works for?
Years.
Yeah.
1.5 years, 2 years. I mean, it's all taken on different stages, but, this first book got picked up 1.5 years ago, and then we started. I was, I couldn't wait that long, to start. So I started working on other books, and I started pitching them. And in the process between, that to now, that's how we've gotten where we are.
So this has been Funny Book Spider. I have been James Ferguson with my guest, Eliot Rahal. You've been listening to Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. We've been bringing you the best in horror since 2002. In addition to comics, we cover movies, TV shows, books, and video games. We've got news, reviews, guest features, interviews, unboxing videos, and much more. Be sure to sign up to Steve's Deals newsletter to increase your horror collection without breaking the bank. Check us out at HorrorTalk.com and at HorrorTalk on Twitter.